Hello, members of the Synod. Greetings to you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples here in Victoria, British Columbia. I'm the Reverend Matt Humphrey, here to share a little bit with you about Wild Church. A year ago, a friend said to me, the world is on fire and the church just doesn't seem to give a damn. That reflects, I think, the urgent and interlocking set of concerns that Wild Church is seeking to address in our time, staring down this intergenerational crisis across the whole globe, noting the untapped potential for the church to really mobilize for the sake of the world. The Wild Church movement is one attempt to respond with courage. An ecumenical movement, Wild Church, has sprung up almost like mushrooms after a fresh rainfall in the forest in response to changing conditions, to vast generational shifts in church attendance, to the sense of deep distrust that many harbor towards our religious institutions, all the while turning toward nature for some sense of the transcendent, and for a hunger to be together with others in community. Often taking diverse forms according to local leadership, some common threads unite its work. Here is how the Wild Church Network, which has 67 active member groups across North America, and over 600 Facebook folk, describes itself. In the age of mass extinction, we feel compelled by the love of Christ to invite people into intimate relationship with some of the most vulnerable victims of our destructive culture: the land, the waters, the creatures with whom we share our homes. New wild churches are emerging all the time, offering invitations to reconnect with the world. As beloved co-participants in a larger story of grace and interbeing, Wild Church gatherings offer opportunities for contemplation, for grief, for praise, for movement, song, wandering, advocacy, restoration, and activism on behalf of and in collaboration with beloved others in our watersheds. So who's taking part in this? There are several experiments in wild churches right here in our own Anglican province, but we have to be honest about the fact that the majority of the creative energy and push for this is emerging in broader ecumenical waters. And we Anglicans are kind of late to the party. The Reverend Laurel Dykstra in the Diocese of New Westminster began the ministry of Salal and Cedar in 2015. Located on Coast Salish territory, they are a community of support and action to help Christians live out a vocation for environmental justice. Rooted in place, tradition, and history, Salal and Cedar is a ministry of the Diocese of New West and serves to be accessible to all, meeting regularly for worship, education, and action, and part of a growing movement of communities across this continent. Laurel's heart for justice and creative liturgical direct action has galvanized a community of action and contemplation. And it is that movement back and forth between the two that I think is so compelling to folk who find a home there, including, I must note, many who have found their way into holy orders through that ministry. I helped found Wild Church Victoria as a ministry of the Emmaus community here in Victoria in 2019. With seed funding from the Diocese of British Columbia's Vision Fund, a small group began gathering outdoors for prayer and contemplation. We met in beaches and parks and cemeteries and courtyards. COVID, of course, sent us, like everyone, into a different mode, offering online workshops and Zoom book studies and an active Facebook group. There are many experiments in our province, and a wide array of churches have begun to self-consciously situate themselves within their local ecology, learning, acknowledging the indigenous history of their lands, getting to know the local watershed and its creatures, and committing to act. So what needs work? This is a movement in the church that frankly a predominantly parish-based model cannot fully support. It involves younger people, the vast majority of which are distrustful of the institutional church, but hungry for the sacramental reality of God in the world. How might your diocese commit to act within a changing climate and a faltering social structure? We do not propose Wild Church as the solution, but part of a whole suite of offerings of creative exploration to respond to this distinct moment. How could we fund such endeavors? Who can we creatively partner with in our local watersheds to build collaborative efforts to appreciate, to attend to, and to better care for our places? These are a few questions I leave with you to discuss in some groups now as part of Synod, and I thank you for your attention.